Fenton.
My name's Austin Terry.
And we are two of the three producers of the film you're about to watch. In this film, we plan on discussing the American identity and how it has declined over the years. We hope to enlighten you and help you gain an understanding of why America may not be the greatest country. So without further ado,
Here's our film. I got this idea when I was in 5th grade, not to this complexity, of course, but to the point of wondering what were the differences between today's generation and past generations, such as the golden generation of the 1920s to 40s. I gained much inspiration for this film from my daily walks of life in America's small town and the HBO show The Newsroom.
Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis?
Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies.
today we'll be discussing the American identity and how it has seemed to decline over the years. First question, we want to know, would you define the American identity? Like, do you believe America is the greatest country in the world? Why or why not?
I guess to me, the American identity is about opportunity. I think this country was built and developed and prospers around the idea of people seeking opportunity to better themselves, to achieve what they want to achieve and provide for their families. And I think that's something that we continue to use to make ourselves a better society, is providing opportunity, increasing opportunity. Well, I think it's just changed. I think as the country changes, as we become a more diverse country, we become a different country. And the challenges are different. You know, the economic challenges, foreign policy challenges, the budget challenges are different with this generation. But I think at the same time that we hold on to our Americanness, our American identity, even though we're changing as a country. And we have a different set of challenges. I think we can still meet those challenges as Americans and have the same kind of heritage of opportunity and openness and meet those challenges.
All right, for the next point. Do you feel this identity has dissipated or faded away since the 20th century? That identity I spoke of earlier.
Well, I wouldn't say it's dissipated. Americans are still leaders in all those things you talked about. We don't necessarily have the big construction projects like you mentioned, like Hoover Dam, but there's a heavy emphasis on science and technology and communication.
Yes.
And we are still leaders. It's just that we are leading in a different way than maybe we did 100 years ago. And our internal makeup is different. We have some different things that are taking up our time and taking up our money, as opposed to the way it was 100 years ago. So it's changed, but I still think we're leaders in most of those areas.
What do you mean in different ways? You were leading in different ways.
Well, our political system has changed a lot. Our economic system has changed a lot. We've gone from manufacturing to service and information. And so we're not building big things like that and involved in manufacturing like we used to be. But we're still a world leader in the things that we are doing, service and information and technology and those kinds of things.
Thank you.
Do you believe that America has a sense of arrogance or maybe even American exceptionalism even though there really is no proof of this? Do you think there's proof of this?
Well, I mean, America has always looked at itself differently. I mean, I think there has always been and is a sense of what you call American exceptionalism.
Yes.
With a lot of people, the idea that America is different, America is special.
Yeah,
It's a
or the
special
best,
place.
right.
Like Ronald Reagan said, a shining city on a hill.
Yes.
You use that kind of example. And so I think that's true, and I think it's a product of how we developed all by ourselves over here, you know, in North America, separate from the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. But I think it's also an ongoing strength that we have. I mean, I think if you think you're special, you're going to try harder, and you're going to be more productive and more hopeful, I think. And so I don't really look at it as that as a negative thing. I think it can be a positive thing.
It can be. That's true.
Now, you use the word arrogance. I do think Americans can be very arrogant.
Yes, yes.
We are a very inward-looking society, in contrast to much of the rest of the world, who has to deal with each other on a daily basis and take into consideration other countries' needs and aspirations. We really haven't had to do that as much. And so I think culture we have developed this sort of inward-looking focus, and that trips us up sometimes, but that's how we developed.
Thank you, sir. Do you believe that our mainstream media is more centralized on less important topics, rather than the actual news of the world? Like y'all was talking about how we're more focused on what happened with Jersey Shore than what's happening in Darfur. If so, why?
Well, I mean, you can look at our modern society in one way as you know, like TV has ruined everything. Like TV has ruined society in certain ways. I mean, you can look at it and make that argument, you know, that it has developed our media, our news gathering into a real short attention span kind of focus.
Kind of like a dramatized news broadcast.
Celebrity focused, drama focused,
Yes, exactly.
Easier ways to tell stories, you know,
Trying
and
to
that's
get
effective.
the hook, get you hooked in.
Get you hooked
trying
in,
to
get you watching, and that's affected the way we look at what's important, I think.
Yes. All these problems we discussed, do you think there's any solution, like, to the laziness or to our media being so polarized on or centralized on the drama? Do you think there's any solution to those?
Well, I mean, there are steps that can be taken, I think. I mean, the media being a free market, I think there's only so much you can do to get the media to focus on real issues, because they're always going to want to sell papers and get ratings to make money. But getting people focused on providing real solutions, I think, is the real challenge, and supporting them as they do that. And part of that is education, and part of that is providing these opportunities that we're talking about. But I do think it's a long-term thing, you know, that we have to focus on areas where we can, and not try to do everything at once.
Dr. Steiner, how would you define the American identity, and do you feel America is the greatest country in the world? Why or why not?
As far as the American identity, I think it's ever evolving. I think that there's always been a fierce individualism in America and a fierce pride, and I think that's something that has not changed, but I think everything else is rapidly changing.
What has happened to the respect and honor of our generation today? You know, compared to the 1920s and 40s, it was, for an example, it was respectful. It was more of expected for a man to open a door for a lady. Now it's more of a rarity. What's happened to that?
I think a lot of things have gone on to contribute to that. I think that, for one, parenting has changed dramatically. Parenting has become more permissive, probably in response to an overly authoritarian parenting that was the style around the turn of the century. A lot of generations after that said, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to hit my children. I'm not going to speak harshly to my children. I'm going to be more like their friend. And so that kind of parenting brought about less of a respect for adults, maybe. Children were allowed to freely express their feelings to their parents and freely express their opinions, and a lot of times their opinions were taken into account, and they were allowed to kind of rule the family in some ways. That kind of carried over to a school setting where students feel very free to express their feelings to their teachers. But in the same vein, it's become harder to be a parent, I think, these days than it used to be, because you're fighting against all the social media, you're fighting against the influence of TV and video games and everything else. More parents are working longer hours, and so they're not physically there to teach the children. Children have become overscheduled, and they're pressured to be overscheduled, and they're pressured to do as many extracurricular activities as they can. And so there's less of a time, I think, to just learn those basic life lessons. We're all so busy that we just don't get to learn those. So there's that aspect of it. I think as far as respect for authority, opening doors for each other and everything, another thing that comes into play is equality. We fought very hard in this country for decades to make sure everyone is treated equally. And because of that, everyone is treated equally, and women are, want to be seen as equal to men, so it's no longer sought after, I guess, by
more
some
of this independent style.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you think we can get back to that, or is that just something that was a pastime characteristic?
That's an interesting question. I think that we probably could get back to it. I think a lot of times with these cultural shifts, it's a real pendulum swing. We swing really far one way, and then there's a backlash against it, and we swing really far the other way. So it's possible that we will get back to that. But at the same time, I think we can't deny that there have been some permanent changes in our society with technology, with access to different things that may make a permanent difference.
So that
There are things to be
ruggedness,
seen.
we've seen, and that hard work, that's kind of dissipated to you, that's kind of fading, or is it more of a change that
Yeah, I think
change in
it's,
style?
yeah, work ethic I think probably has faded. I think there's no denying that. But you've seen a lot of people with the economy downturn going to get jobs that they wouldn't ordinarily have stooped so low to get. You've seen people kind of stepping up. So,
What is the psychology community naming the generation of today? Why so?
well, I think it's still part of the millennial generation. It's kind of the tail end of the millennial generation. But a lot of people have also called it the me generation because of that entitlement that we've talked about. And also the technological natives, because we say that people who were not, who didn't grow up with access to technology 24/7 are technology or digital immigrants. But people who were born with it, who had it in their lives all the time, are natives. And so I think that this generation is definitely natives.
Do you believe that society and students of America today have become complacent and, let's say, taking the easier way rather than working hard to what they want? And you mentioned about, our work ethic has really crumbled down. So you believe that we have become complacent?
I don't know if I'd say complacent, but I think that people have become very resistant to delaying gratification. People, because everything in our society today, almost everything, is instant gratification. You want news, you can get it whenever you want it. You want to go buy something, most people can instantly, credit card, boom. And when you really had to work for a long time to get something, I think that will make you more patient, make you appreciate things more, and make you less complacent, I guess, if you will. And so today, when people have everything at their fingertips, they truly want everything at their fingertips. Students want me to email them back immediately when they email me. Because we're used to that.
We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't We didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered.
Sorry.
Ask me your idiot question again.
What makes America the greatest country in the world?
You do.